Welcome, everybody. Sunday satsang. I have a longtime student named Steve, and I've posted several of his emails to me over the years when he talks about states he's gone through. About 7 or 8 years ago, he came to Los Angeles and came to a group that Dee and I ran for a weekend, I think it was. And I remember looking at his face and the tears that were in his eyes. I don't know whether it was love or bliss, or what exactly he was feeling, but it felt very devotional. He had many energetic openings, Shakti openings, the ones where you feel immense energy inside of you and things in the external world get bizarre. States where you become everything, where everything seems very fresh and new and bright. And then somewhere he fell off the ladder, and more recently became a big Trump follower. And I couldn't figure out how someone who had such elevated and majestic experiences of the divine could fall to the feet of Trump. I just don't get it still, even to this day. Well, anyway, recently, for the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's gone deeper. He's gone to the place before consciousness. And he sees both consciousness and the world as add-ons, but not something to pay much attention to. You see, introversion, which is what self-inquiry is about, however you practice it, and there are many ways, is a way of putting yourself first, rather than being totally occupied with what's happening in the world, the news, the plague of the day, politics, sex, acquisitions, livelihood, the things one has in one's house as objects. Garima is always lusting after some new objects. She's been that way ever since 1983, when she filled up our tiny apartment with the furniture that could fill a 6-room house. There is almost nowhere to move. She still does that, but she's much more selective now. The items are large ticket items rather than small ticket items. But what if you didn't care about that anymore? And you started instead to go inside? A lot of people don't know how to go inside. Some say they can't get beyond their skin going inside. They feel like they're external to the body and can't get inside the body. My cat seems to be very restless. Maybe she's communicating with Karima on some subliminal level. But after you start going within, and there are many ways, like the way I did it was to follow the I thought, which was the instruction given by Robert Adams to me, which means I had to be able to sort out thoughts. I had to be able to slow them down, to recognize them. And after a while, I got to the place where all thoughts seemed to be like little particles, sort of like a dark circle with a light center, like an eye floating around. And they were all around me, and I recognized them. The totality was all the concepts that we as a civilization have now floated around. And some made it into my head. And when they made it into my head, I had that thought, and that thought generated other thoughts, and it was a train. It formed a train. It just spilled out and went on and entranced me. And this is how it is with most people. The mind is always in the background speaking, and part of you is always listening to what the mind is saying. But when you go inward, the outer world becomes decreasingly interesting, and the inner world becomes more interesting. See, you're looking for the ultimate subject. Everything in the world is an object. You to me, and me to you are objects. In my sensual field, in my existential world that I live in, I'm surrounded by objects. A television set, a knick-knack shelf, a walker, 2 cat beds, and so on. Cat tree, an exercise bike, another recliner, a big mirror on the wall, green walls and a white ceiling. These are all objects to me. And most people pay most attention to their objects. And acquiring objects or getting rid of objects. But when you don't care about objects anymore, and you start going deeper into yourself, penetrating downwards into deeper levels of consciousness rather than just the surface of the existential world, you find layers inside of you which you're not familiar with. But by observing them, you do become familiar with them. They become your new objects. For example, thoughts. Most people have their inner radios going on all the time. It's a form of entertainment. It's a way for some people to know that they're living because they've got their mind always talking to them. Then there's the level of emotions. Now, when you've penetrated this level and you've dealt with emotions by observing them, letting them come into your heart entirely, roll around inside for a while, then come to rest. And when they come to rest, they add to you their energy. When we're young, emotions rule our lives. We don't know any better. We're just moved by emotions, as well as habits, as well as the common concepts in our milieu in society. Because we all live in a vast package of concepts that frame everything we do, everything we think, everything we say. And it's so hard to escape until you can begin to look at thoughts themselves as objects and emotions themselves as objects rather than as me. I think most people would think that that constant stream of thoughts that go on inside of them is them. It's not something that happens to them. It's intrinsic to their concept of who they are. My mind. The same with emotions. As a youngster and as more oldsterish, I've always been kind of emotional and explosive in terms of those emotions. They take me over, especially love and fear. But after playing around with these inner experiences for years, they've become like external objects to me, much like the wall or the television set, or the cat tree over there, or the mirror. They're just objects, background. I pay them no heed. And I don't have them much anymore. I'm not in a situation where I'm much engaged in the world. So I don't have a lot of passionate emotions about anything except my cats. And even that is not nearly as strong as it used to be. We have a cat now, Fred, who's dying. He'll probably die within 2 weeks. He's been sick now for months with kidney failure. We give him 150 milliliters of fluids every day. And he doesn't eat by himself. We feed him with syringes. We feed him baby food. And I put any medications inside the baby food. But it's happened so many times with me and our cats dying. They usually die around age 15, but some die much sooner and a few die much older. But when the process happens to you dozens of times, it no longer causes the distress as when you're young, or me as when I was young. "15 years ago, if a cat were sick, or 20 years ago, there is almost nothing that Kareem and I wouldn't do to keep that cat alive. Force feeding, fluids, medications, doctor's visits, reading the internet for ideas about how to take care of the cat. But now we know, but more or less, what has to be done and how to do it. Kareem, I could see, is more emotionally invested in keeping Fred alive and making him feel easy. But to me, it's old news. And not that I'm distant. It's just that I'm not torn apart anymore by death. So back to Steve. Recently, his consciousness has dropped much deeper. It's dropped to the level that I first experienced with Robert in 1995, when I was able to separate myself totally from consciousness and watch consciousness itself as an object. I know some of you have expressed that they have the ability, you have the ability to sit in meditation and grasp the totality of consciousness as a whole. And it feels something like holding a basketball in your hands. You're able to get a hold of the whole thing. It's no longer a vastness that you can't begin to visualize, but it feels like you have the whole world in your hands, the whole wide world in your hands. But it's even wider than that. It's the whole universe. So Steve is going through that now. He'd write me that he was aware of the coming and going of consciousness as easily as most people are aware of the coming and going of emotions or thoughts or physical states, like breathing or digestion. So in this sense, he's in the deepest state now, spends a lot of time in it. And nothing interests him in the world anymore. The only thing that he really pays attention to and enjoys is the extremely deep peace he feels in this most rudimentary of observational states where even consciousness is an object to him. Now, this requires a bit of explanation. What you are at this depth can never be known. But what you can do is experience yourself at this depth. You realize there's an innermost subject that is aware of consciousness and all the objects of consciousness. But you reach a place where you're aware of and separate from consciousness itself. And what you do see is when consciousness leaves and moves away from you, you're only aware of consciousness. You're not aware of yourself as an object, as a thing, as an entity. And when consciousness comes closer, you're aware that you're aware of consciousness. This is a very high state because this is the state where you can realize that you are not born. You never have been born. What you are as the witness or as the absolute is a place of no experience. Nothing there at all. Not even concern about the boredom of having nothing, because there's no such thing as boredom. Boredom is a human state. You're in a place where there's nothing. But if you look and you feel deeply, there is something that can be experienced, at least for a time. And that is, as deeper you go into this state of non-existence, the more peace you feel. You know, for example, if you're very busy during the day and you decide you've had it with the busyness and you decide to just relax and calm down, and you'll feel over a period of a few minutes or many minutes, your body relaxing, perhaps your mind relaxing, your breathing to slow down. And if you're successful, you'll feel very relaxed and peaceful. And the last thing you want to do is go back to a busy life filled with activities and things to be done, things to be attained, things to be run away from. Household repairs, sick cats, all of that is noise to you. It's noise. It's like something you have to deal with. And you deal with it sort of automatically. But it's not something that rocks your boat anymore. to look for a new place to live or a new house seems like an endlessly difficult project to the person who is in this rested state. Even thoughts disappear into consciousness. And consciousness is over there, some distance away. And I can watch it come towards me and get closer and closer. And then when it gets close enough, I'm suddenly in a world that my consciousness has created. It's a very sudden thing. But you know, it happens to each of us every morning. We're in a dark, peaceful realm. We start to come awake. We can be aware of it coming. And then suddenly, almost instantaneously, you'll be awake. Some of us can take that interval and expand it and see that that gap between being asleep and awake has various levels of consciousness itself before the appearance of the external world and the recognition you're separate from it, an object within it yourself, or think of yourself as an object within it. But where Steve is, where I am, all that I'm aware of is objects. Even the deepest things within me that I used to know is to explore and go deeper and deeper has become objects to me. The inner world. And when I go deep enough, I'm in the witness, so to speak. And I flip around from going within to have an absolute silent mind, looking out into the world with no feeling of separation anymore. I am the totality of existence. I am the flowing energies I can feel around me. I am the noises and the sounds. I am the airplane flying overhead and the birds singing outside. I am the breeze blowing the leaves and the trees making that sound that they make. It feels like utter freedom because I can be anywhere, go anywhere, and not have to do it with any effort. And the thing I experience most is that the deeper I go inside, all the objects I leave behind, not only the external world, but almost everything about myself is left behind, including thoughts, emotions, physical sensations like breathing, muscle tension, growling stomach, breath sensations. All of these disappear to me. And I'm in a great rest with extremely deep feelings of peace. Now, Nisargadatta has suggested that the moment of death will bring the greatest experience that a yogi can have, because the yogi will then be transitioning from some sense of being an object and attached to objects like his body to becoming non-manifest, to become the nominal, the source, which has no dimension, has no space, has no time, no attributes, no extension, no mass. And with that utter peace, that transition is to utter peace. Now, some people say, well, what's the good of this? Of losing your body and your mind and going to the place where there's no more observation of any kind, no more consciousness of any kind. Well, the person that says that is addicted to consciousness, is addicted to the feelings of their own body. Because you see, the love for life is the primary motivator in all of us who are alive. Our own life, for example, the life force, the life in others, the life in our pets. Our love is for that, for them, for me, as an existing being. I love the life force, however it's manifested. That's why I try to keep my cats alive and healthy. And then when they're dying, to make their death as uneventful as possible. Yeah, back to Steve. Steve has 11 or 12 cats. I don't know how many right now. They also take care of the animals in the yard, which includes raccoons and rabbits and other kinds of entities that they feed outside, as well as wasps, which have created a nest between their outer front door and the screen in front of it. For 2.5 years now, his wife has been feeding the wasps honey when it rains because they can't fly in the rain. So she doesn't want them to be hungry. Now, who hasn't been confronted with a spider or bug of some sort in your house that you don't want there and struggled with wanting to kill it just to get it over with, or to capture it and take it outside? I think most of us here will try to capture it and take it outside. It wasn't always that way. But Steve says his life is constant activities to take care of the animals. His cats, the raccoons, to feed them, to water them, to take care of the ones that are outside, to rescue birds that have been injured and nurse them back to health, take them to vets if necessary. So his life is still dedicated to taking care of all of these animals. And he wouldn't trade it for anything. It's just that now he does it only because he does it. There's no more drive in him to do these things. You might say that these activities happen through him without him paying any heed to them. And then something very interesting is after Steve was describing to me the kinds of collapse and expansions he's going through now, said, "Oh, I forgot to mention, not even a minute passes by that I'm not listening to chanting." He has one of those MP3 players, and has converted the chants into MP3 files, and he plays them continuously, day and night, while he's asleep, while he's awake, while he's taking care of the cats, while he's writing emails to me. And I realized my own awakening experience of that sort happened to me in 1995, 3 or 4 weeks after Robert left Los Angeles to go to Sedona, and I remained behind in Los Angeles. And after he left, almost from the moment he left, I started listening nonstop to chanting. Only I had a cassette player, and I played Muktananda tapes as well as other tapes. And after 3 or 4 weeks, I had an awakening experience similar to what he's talking about now and experiencing now. And it just seems that it was in some ways related to the constant chanting of mantras and bhajans and kirtans I was listening to. And I know that if I listen to chanting now, sometimes it grabs me very strongly. And the energy in my head becomes strong, and my whole body feels very heavy and peaceful, like I weigh 500 pounds, but it's all very graceful and peaceful. I don't want to move. I don't want to think. I just want to feel this and continue listening to the sound that seems to do it for me. My mind may move, or my attention may move to whatever is being pointed out inside of me, like the heaviness or the energy, but there's no thoughts. There's no distractions. There's only the movement of my attention. And almost all of the objects that I see are close to being invisible or not perceptible. The lamp is turned very down, very much down. There's not a lot going on. Everything is slowed down. Everything sort of becomes objects, but I'm not aware of them that much because I don't care about them, because I'm much, much deeper into myself, to the core of the absolute. And it's for this reason, just recently, I've been harping on this idea of having a central depository for chanting music that we could all access and download files from a website or something like that. And we could each get an MP3 player for $25 or $35 or $45 and listen to chanting a lot. Like I always listened to it when it happened to me, to Muktananda's style chanting, which is very energetic, and it's call and response. Either the guru calls out, or the students call out, or the men call out, and then the females call out. It's called call and response style chanting. Chaitanya style, and see how this helps you. Just spend some time doing it. You don't have to do it with an MP3 player. You can do it with any speakers that have batteries in or can be plugged in to play tunes off of one. You can have it throughout the house. And you can do it in your sleep if you want, either with headphones or to have it on a speaker next to your bed. I guarantee you will have experiences. I guarantee you will have experiences. I don't know what you're going to have, but you will have experiences because it happened to me, it happened to him. And I know that these experiences don't happen to everybody. When I was at Mount Baldy, I was having all kinds of meditation experiences, like becoming one with the world, the universe, with the wind, bird flying through the sky, and others not so much, nothing. They sat very still, just like I did, not moving, but they were not having any experiences like that. But I know if you have the slightest tendency towards devotion, listening to devotional music constantly will absorb your mind. It'll slow down and stop, and you won't be paying much attention to your mind, your thoughts, but rather to the energies of the music, of the chanting, which means already you've moved into a divine world, which is no longer mundane, but it's just consciousness. I want you all to be happy. Even more than that, I want you to have these deep realizations about who and what you are. The energetic experiences of beholding God as energy and light and as sentience, and that you have that same sentience, that same light, that same observation as God. And He's with you all the time in an energetic state, while you too can be an energetic state that you can observe and feel. And then you begin to realize the magnificence of that, the things inside of you that used to be you and invisible are now objects to you. You've gone into a deep hole of consciousness, heading towards non-consciousness, towards the noumenal self, the one that cannot be observed, the one that's on the other side of observational consciousness or the manifest world. And the deeper you go, the more that you had formerly considered to be yourself becomes object to you and is no longer self or identified with self, including emotions, including love. And you're at peace. So if anybody wants to do this thing, if you have access to a website, and they're easy to get by almost any provider, free websites, and you hunt out on the internet chanting music and find out how to download it. They have, like with YouTube, an application where you put in the URL for the music, and it'll separate and download both the video and the audio portion and split off the audio, which you can save as an MP3. And then when we get enough of these, like some 100 hours or so, we'll open the site for people to do this. We can even recommend certain machines to use to download it so you can listen to this. And I know that when I was at Muktananda's ashram in Los Angeles, more specifically in Santa Monica, we had the chanting on a lot throughout the whole building with 90-some people living there. And at night too, during the programs, we'd have the chanting being played throughout the whole building. And it'd be accompanied by live music from the devotees who knew how to do the tambura, do the harmonium, and work the drum. And it's a very powerful, powerful event. As Frank well knows, he was there at the same time I was when Muktananda was in town for 6 months, 1980. It was a life-changing event. Hearing the power of 1,500 people chanting the same chant, hearing the same music, listening to the call and response of men and women. Listen very intently at what kind of emotions of love and devotion were inculcated by their calling voices. If you choose to do this, maybe one or two out of this crowd will take a stab at it, enough to get a few dozen songs for us to play. Now, I have a website at Weebly called Satsang with Edji, EDJI, .weebly.com, that has maybe 70 or 80 chants on it, but I can't access it. This was done 10 years or so ago. I don't even know what the address is to find the control room, let alone to download them. But anybody that can open up them, and there's a lot of music right there that can be downloaded directly to a website or from that website into your music playing device. I highly, highly, highly suggest listening to a lot of chanting. If you can, get an MP3 player so you can have the earphones on you all the time. This is especially good for the newer people who don't have a lot of experience chanting, because the music does the thing for you. It slows your mind down, gives you something to entertain you, and then to take you to new states of mind. Are there any questions? Any observations? Has somebody left a response? David Kennedy is one of the best sites that makes an MP3 file out of a YouTube video. And he gives the address. But I'm not suggesting that everybody do it for themselves, but those who already have an extensive collection of files to make this available for everybody, not just themselves, so that it's easy to do. A lot of people don't have the expertise to fool around on the internet, download files and split the MP3 from the MP4 files, etc., and to install them on their devices in such a way that you can play them either in sequence or shuffle randomly throughout your collection. So these things should be done for most people. But this requires somebody to take a stab at it and to do it because they care not only for themselves to have it, but for the other person to have it. You don't have to all rush at once to say something. Slow down. Brenda, you don't have to say anything.
Edgy, the file that Rolf sent me, which has about 3 hours of Krishna Das chants, had an expiration date on it. So I was going to try to send it, but I can't because it's the file, the link is gone. Spotify, which I have, not the premium, so I get commercials every 4 or 5 chants. I would upgrade. Anyone can get Spotify and start downloading Krishna Das. I have the satsangs with Edgy file. I might try to download it. I don't know that I have it so I can play it. The site that David shared about an MP3 player, I might check just to see. My son is the techie, so I don't know, maybe I can sort this out. Anything I can share, I shall, but. Also, I'm sorry, I didn't acknowledge when you came into the satsang yesterday. I was reading Mary's extraordinary, exquisite telling of her samadhi experience, and I just got lost in it. So forgive me for not doing my obeisance to you and prostrating myself on the floor.
You can do it now. Let's see you do it. Just kidding. Just kidding. You know what I can't get about Mary is after this exquisite experience, how wrapped up she was in fear and anger towards Ian and Cassie, and demanded that I kick them out of our satsang. I've never kicked anybody out of satsang. And why was she so upset about it? Like she said, she felt threatened. So how could she have this exquisite experience and fall, it seems, right into Trumpism a few months later, where her ego dominates and demanding that I throw them out without a trial, without, oh, yes. And she didn't want me to check with other people what their experience was of the argument that precipitated her misery, so to speak. She said it wasn't necessary for you to examine it. I'm telling you what happened. And on that basis, I want you to kick them out. This is, can't fathom how a person that had that exquisite awakening experience could be like that in real life just a few months later.
I I I I couldn't believe I was blown away when I read it. When I read it again yesterday, I read it I read it for everyone here, and there were only 4 of us. Well, 5 of us, I've forgotten the count, but I read it for Frank because Frank has had this experience very deep, and I wanted to share it because yes, my incredulity is the same as yours, that she had this profound awakening. And I believe, and I still believe, that for so much of the satsangs, you are speaking to her because it reminds you of Angela. And on some way, today was beyond anything. Just that I was here for you today is I love you. I can't even put it into words. I'm at your feet, kissing your feet. You are my beloved in every way imaginable. And I say this every time. You take me so deep. But today was deeper than anything I've ever
Really?
experienced.
Good.
I love you.
And I love you too.
Thank you, Angie.
You have that devotional kind of thing like Steve has.
I do Saturdays because I always said that I would share. Some of the other days, Wednesdays and Sundays, absolute. But yesterday I felt that Shakti, it isn't dragging me here. It's helping me, bringing me here, sharing, channeling. It's a confluence of grace and bliss and joy so deep. Bernadette and Chris were here. Frank came. Mark wasn't here. That's why I came, because Mark is this template of grace and being every single time. He drops the needle on Krishna Das and takes us to a place I can't even imagine. I would, this whole thing about putting on chants and having it on all the time, it sounds, when I chant, when I sit on, when I get the cat off my $400 worth of meditation cushions and turn on Krishna Das, it's just explosive. It's just exquisite. So, but today, Edgy, you're in the pantheon of God manifest in a way I couldn't even imagine. To be so blessed as to be here. Thank you. I love you.
I love you too. Anybody else? Vaseline, do you have something to say? She always does, eventually.
No.
Oh, come on, say something.
Oh, nothing. Now I am so. I feel like I have to do something about those chants, and I cannot figure out what to do. And that's it. Because I can try to find the pirate version of the chants, but I don't know if people do this anymore. Because I used to have so many songs that I download that way. But now everything you pay for it, but then even after you pay for the chants, you cannot share them, at least on Apple. You can't share them with other people. It's only on your account, I think. So.
I've left her with another impossible thing to do.
Yeah, now I have this thing in my head.
Now, not only do you have to get a medical degree, you have to figure out how to get the chance to everybody.
Yeah.
I don't hear Mark saying anything. Mark, have you anything to say?
Not really, but I'm becoming of the belief that my path is slightly divergent from yours, although it's an offshoot, and it's the path of following the divine bliss. And I go through the same states that you talk about, or most of them. At least briefly, I encounter the most profound ones, and it's all through engaging in beingness, finding the route to the divine bliss and abiding in that. So I don't know if that's individual, like if that's unusual, or if that's part of the process. But the main thing is that much of the time I abide in total, like you say, peace, which I would rephrase, and not to be pedantic, but I would rephrase the peace as being total and utter fulfillment on every level. It's not like the usual feeling of peace. It's much more profound for me.
Maxie, have you anything to say? We'll see whether he turns his microphone on or not.
Ed,
And reveals himself sleeping.
Not really.
David. Can I ask a question, Ed?
What?
May I ask a question?
Who's this? Who's speaking?
David Kennedy.
Oh, okay. Wave your hand so I know which
can't
one
turn
you
on my-
are.
I can't turn on my camera right now.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been listening to this whole thing, and I'm really thankful for every word. And I'm just wondering, I'm on board with the chant idea, and I'm just wondering if you
What's
could
that?
just
I can't
say-
hear you.
I'm on board. Let me fix this.
Are you still there?
Okay, do you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I'm on board with this chanting plan, and I've been listening to everything. And I'm just wondering if you would be willing to just say in a sentence or two what it does for us to do this all day and all night, chanting, listening.
Well, I can only say what it did for me and what it's done for Steve is to lead to the ultimate states, the deepest discoveries. You might say the deepest kind of enlightenment. There's many different kinds of enlightenments, like awakening yourself to seeing and feeling God within, the vital force, the life force, with light, energy, bliss, power, and love. That's one kind of awakening. And usually it's necessary to have this kind of awakening in order to go to deeper levels. It sort of gives you the power of the life force, and the life force guides you as well as lends the kind of power necessary to reach the deeper states that Steve is exploring right now, and that I found in 1995 after Robert left for Sedona, and I was left alone with my own devices. So I turned to listening to chanting 24/7. Even when I was out walking and exercising, I would have it on, listening to the chanting. It slows the mind, gets rid of the thinking, and the music itself, depending on the chant or the mantra that is being said, has different effects on you at different times. That's the power of mantras, is they can affect you even if you don't know the words or if they're in a different language. It's the tonality and the repetition and the sequencing of the sounds that is important. And I felt that with Muktananda style chanting, of being entrained, having my consciousness entrained by this chanting to be able to have very deep experiences that move throughout my whole body and my being and consciousness. It's an aid to enlightenment.
Ed, it's Frank. Can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you.
Ed, can you hear me now?
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Good one. So I had a new kind of an experience during that. I had two successive dreams in which, in each of them, there was Frank, the dream Frank, and then the awareness in the dream that I was dreaming, and consciousness took over. And consciousness, how can I say it, informed the dreaming Frank to change some of his behaviors, and then to talk to somebody else. In the first case, it was my wife. In the second case, it was well, it doesn't matter who it was, but it was to describe to them that I just had a lucid dream in the dream. And I've never had anything like that before. I had two back to back. So just saying it, I have no way of interpreting it. Just it is a new experience.
In general, how do you feel now, day to day?
Really good, really good. Very
Describe.
calm. I feel peaceful. I feel expansive. Meditation this morning was very quiet and focusing on the presence that you described last time. Can't say much else. I just feel unencumbered. Suppose that's a good word.
Cassie?
I don't think anybody wants to hear anything about what's going on through my mind at the moment. I wouldn't say it.
Tell us how much you love Mary.
Oh, no. No.
So can I go? Can I say something?
Sure.
Namaste, sir, and namaste, everyone. My first time here, and my purpose of coming here today is actually to say thank you first, because I came across your website 1 month ago. Am I audible? Right? No. And I read Hunting the Eye for the first time. And can I just give a little bit backstory of my practice?
Sure.
So I've been doing self-inquiry. One of my friends introduced me to self-inquiry in 2020 January, 2019 December. So I've been doing that since like a year and a half now. And like so what I really connected with your Hunting the Eye was the practice, that the falling back that you call. I didn't know you exactly put everything into words that I do, because I found it difficult explaining to people like what abiding is, or what, the inquiry actually is. But that is what I really connected with. And after I read your story, the shower story, for the first time, there were a few lines that really, like few little small shifts that I felt. And like, I think after that, within a week, there was this experience. I do my meditation like twice or thrice sometimes. And like, it's always on in the background, right? But before like going to bed, to sleep, I was doing it that day. And suddenly I felt like I wasn't there for the first time. Everything else was there. The bed was there, the wardrobe was there, everything else was there. But this time I wasn't there. And that is when I came to know what this I am or this center is for the first time. Or what this I am, or I don't know, because it was for a very brief moment, but it was followed by peace. And until next day afternoon, I felt like I wasn't responsible for any of this, But with me, what happens is my mind comes back with a greater force. And not that I can go back to what I was, or, obviously there's a change, but still like now there's this expansion that is trying to happen. And like, I don't really have a question followed by this, but I just don't know what to do like after this. I'm doing my practice, but, and then there's still some negative emotions that I feel inside me right now. So I don't know. And then I read about vasanas and what vasanas is, or maybe it is because of that. But then you mentioned chanting, and somehow it told me to worship it. Like somehow I get this devotion feeling. And that is when right now you said about music, and I think I haven't done it since a very long time. So it might be a good idea to
Listen to chanting music,
yeah.
especially Muktananda music if you can get it, or Krishna Das. Enrique, what have you to say?
Not much, Ed. Just enjoying life, pretty much. Spending a lot of time in meditation, active and passive meditation. Killing my time doing all these geometric figures. I'm loving it.
Chris?
I've been hearing, reading, watching lots, and it seems it's all the same at the moment. See, I keep finding the same things, always talking about identity, ego, desire, and attachments. And I see a lot of that in me. I can watch a lot of that in me. And that's what seems to be in my face right now, is those things. And I keep meditating on them, trying to relax. Now, when I say meditate on it, I don't mean trying to do anything. I'm trying to be quieter. If that can be, that sounds stupid, but trying to be quiet sounds, well, you get the idea. Listening to a lot of chant helps a lot. It quiets my mind. It gives me peace. So these things that I mentioned earlier are starting slowly. I can feel them slowly slipping away. And I agree with you. Listening to chant has a lot to do with it. It really just I either feel nothing or better when I listen to chant. And I agree.
Good, thank you. Well, nobody's advised that they are willing to participate in the project of making the music files available to everybody by hosting them on a site or doing the work of getting them together. So I guess we're all on our own. Now Jay will be doing some stuff, but if he loses his time and the link disappears, what are we going to do?
Well, the link is gone. All I have on one channel is the satsangs with Edgy. I have it. I don't think I could find the source anymore. I don't know that I can even download it any further than the browser that it's on. The only other thing was the file that Rolf sent, and that was time sensitive, and that link is gone, so I can't share that.
Well, maybe he'll give, if you ask him, he'll give you the link again.
Sure. I mean,
Same with Stevie. Stevie sent you some stuff too, didn't he?
anything that Stevie sent me, I put on Spotify. The only thing I would do for me, and anyone can do this, and again, that link is gone also, and I haven't spoken to him since he left. What I want to do is just buy the premium Spotify so that I don't get commercials, because for $9 a month, I can spring for that. And then I can leave it on all the time, put on headphones and go deep. But the other channels are not available to me, and I'm not sure they're available to anyone since I can't source them anymore.